Today, the Matt Walsh Show, disaster strikes North Carolina. The media assures us that the federal government is doing a great job in response, but is that actually true? We'll find out. Also, Kamala Harris is asked again about her economic plan and once again reveals that she doesn't have one. The New Yorker publishes a think piece about my new film, Am I Racist? Apparently, they didn't like it very much. Who could have guessed? And Stevie Nicks just released a new pro-abortion single. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Join Daily Wire Plus for extensive coverage of the 2024 election season, including tonight's VP debate with our exclusive pre- and post-backstage show. With Daily Wire Plus, you get daily, uncensored, ad-free shows from the most trusted names of conservative media. And for a limited time, get 47% off your new Daily Wire Plus membership with code FIGHT. Don't miss out. Head to dailywire.com/subscribe and join the fight today. With the Federal Reserve recently dropping interest rates, it's time to make a smart financial move and call my friends at American Financing today. With mortgage rates now in the fours, yes, the fours, now it's the perfect time to consolidate your debt and reduce your monthly expenses. And let's be honest, a lot of us have been forced to use credit cards because of the ridiculous prices at the grocery store, on power bills, and even for childcare. It's getting out of hand. That credit card debt, it's not just expensive, it's insanely expensive. But here's the good news. With mortgage rates dropping, now's the time to wipe that debt out. American Financing is helping homeowners just like you save over $800 a month on average. It's real money you could be using to, actually enjoy your life a little. Imagine that. They're even closing some loans in as fast as 10 days. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments, 2 whole payments, plus there are no upfront fees to find out how much you can save. None, zero, zilch. So here's what you need to do. Call American Financing today at 866-569-4711 or 866-569-4711. Or if you're more digitally inclined, visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh. NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, APR for rates in the 4 started APR 5.672% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-569-4711 for details about credit card costs and terms. On Friday morning at 6:15 a.m., some residents of Swannanoa, North Carolina received an emergency alert on their phones. This screenshot was sent to me by somebody living there. It reads, mandatory evacuation in your area, severe flooding, high water can cause loss of life and property, move to high ground, away from water, do not delay. This text came after several other emergency alerts were sent throughout the night from the National Weather Service, indicating that a flash flood was in progress, and those alerts were sent at 3:16 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. prior to the evacuation order. Now, some people in the area say they didn't receive these alerts at all. Maybe their phones were off, or they didn't have a cell signal, or they were asleep. But for the most part, it didn't matter. The final evacuation alert was too late for many of them to escape. Before dawn, the water was so high that lawns were submerged. Floodwaters had risen more than 4 feet in less than 1 hour. 911 calls wouldn't connect. The worst of the storm was already underway at this point. The full extent of the devastation and the number of lives lost remains unclear. What we do know is that much of Swannanoa and many other parts of the Southeast have been destroyed. Cars are hanging from tree limbs. Many homes have been ripped from their foundations and tossed upside down. More than 130 people are dead, with bodies being found every hour. Several people who sought refuge on top of their homes awaiting rescue drowned when their roofs collapsed. Over the past 2 days, I've received several emails from people living in Western North Carolina, and they all say the same thing. The federal government failed. For all of the billions of dollars that FEMA spends on preparing for disasters, they didn't provide early warning about the potential impact of Hurricane Helene. They didn't issue an evacuation order soon enough. And after the devastation, they didn't provide immediate resources that could save lives. Here's a message that was sent to me from Ashe County, North Carolina. This is a rural area of the state. They're faring even worse than the cities are. Some of the houses have more than 36 inches of water that they're sitting in now. Quote, I have seen the devastation with my own eyes and have employees and friends in the mountains that will not have power for weeks. I'm a paramedic for a neighboring county. There have been no FEMA personnel sighted in our area, even though the danger has passed. Our electric cooperative has been amazing, and they're the ones building roads, clearing land, and doing overflows. This morning we saw some Blackhawks doing flyovers, but that's the first ones. I've been told the DOD is refusing to allow helicopters to fly into our area, even though the service members want to help. The man adds, quote, we're coming together in churches and volunteer fire departments are delivering water and food. As we get cell phone service, we're reaching out to friends. Lowe's ensured a huge delivery of generators was delivered yesterday and no price gouging. Everything that's happening is from locals helping out, churches delivering, local food banks and businesses. Local government emergency management is doing everything they can. The federal government is failing in every sense of the word. The focus has been on the areas that have money and honestly seem as if they vote a specific way. Unquote. Now, there are many more reports just like that one. The journalist Nick Sortor reported yesterday that, quote, shelters in West North Carolina are over capacity and do not have enough food, and FEMA is nowhere to be found. One shelter was 30 meals short. What the hell's going on? Where are Biden and Harris? Meanwhile, the New York Post reports that, quote, that due to the breakdown of law and order, 8 migrants were just arrested for looting in eastern Tennessee in the aftermath of the storm. They're between the ages of 24 and 51 years old. Charges include burglary and aggravated burglary. These are crimes that the federal government enabled on 2 separate occasions. First, they let these criminals into the country, and then they failed to ensure law and order in the aftermath of the storm. On WMAL yesterday, the executive director of Ascend Women's Center in Asheville, a woman named Christy Brown, made it clear that more assistance is desperately needed. People don't have food or water. Listen.
They're having to manage how many can go in at a time so it's not a stampede. Lines for gas are like 3 hours long. So, yes, many of us probably did not prepare as well as we should have. Like, I bought bottled water, but did I think I was going to be without power for 5 to 8 days? No, I didn't.
Right.
So, did I buy enough? No. And in the Asheville area, we have a lot of rural areas, and people live on mountaintops. And they live out past cornfields and that type of thing. So many times it's one lane in, one lane out, and you may have bridges. Well, when you have 30-foot surges of your water, nothing can withstand that, right? And so we weren't prepared, but again, no one thought it was going to be as bad as it was. And now that we're on the storm has passed, now it's like, how do we build back this infrastructure so that you're not waiting 3 hours to get gas? Or if you go to the grocery store and you wait 45 minutes to get through the door, how do you assure that there is water on the shelf? It's the basics that people need right now, which is clean water, food. They need the ability to communicate because they don't have internet. So I talked to someone this morning who cannot get a hold of a family member since Friday morning. So she's worried sick, whether this woman's dead or alive. And then on top of that, her house was hit by trees.
So it should go without saying that the federal government should be doing everything it can to pour as many resources as it possibly can into every state that's been affected by this storm. This should be by far the most important issue that our government is focusing on, but that doesn't appear to be what's happening. For his part, Joe Biden was on the beach, supposedly making phone calls about the storm. You can only imagine how coherent those alleged phone calls would have been. And then Joe Biden declared that there's nothing more his administration can do for the people affected by the disaster that's happening in this country. Watch.
Do you have any words for the victims of the hurricane?
Yes, it's tragic. As a matter of fact, we're trying to get the exact number. My FEMA advisor is on the ground in Florida right now. There's a distinction between the numbers that FEMA's used and the ones that are used by the locals. So it really is amazing. You saw the photographs. It's stunning.
It's unbelievable. But it really is. Such a wide area.
And we've given them all everything that we have. We're on the ground ahead of time. So we're working hard.
Are there any more resources the federal government could be giving them?
No, we have pre-planned a significant amount of it, even though they didn't ask for it yet. Hadn't asked for it yet.
Now, when it comes to foreign aid, nobody in the Biden administration has ever said anything like that. Biden has never told Ukraine, yeah, you're good. You don't need any more money. We've given you all you can, all that we can. But when American citizens are drowning in their own homes, well, they're on their own, I guess. Biden doesn't seem to care that the shelters are full or that people don't have food. Neither does the acting president of the United States, Kamala Harris. Her response to the storm has included attending a fundraiser in Hollywood and reading a prepared statement off a teleprompter at FEMA headquarters without taking any questions. She also tweeted out this image to document her response to the hurricane, in which she pretends to be taking an important phone call as she holds a pen over a blank piece of paper. Now, you notice that her wired headphones aren't even connected to the phone. So to be clear, this was not a candid photo. This is the image that Kamala Harris's handlers choreographed and selected to send out during a crisis to project competence and control. But it does the exact opposite. It highlights what we already knew, which is that Kamala Harris is an actor miming the motions of what a competent commander-in-chief should be doing. And she happens to be a very bad actor. But Democrats are stuck with her now, so they're pretending that this isn't obvious to everyone. They're also banking that voters weren't alive in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit. Because you probably remember that the one enduring image we talked about briefly yesterday from Hurricane Katrina is this photo of President Bush flying over the aftermath of the hurricane, looking out the window of Air Force One, and you could see it there. This infamous photograph allegedly showed that Bush didn't care about all the people suffering on the ground, especially the black people, as Kanye West famously said. It proved that Bush was detached and uncaring, we were told. And for well over a decade, media organizations have referred to this photograph as one of the greatest blunders of Bush's presidency. Bush himself has apologized for it, calling the photograph a huge mistake. Now, of course, the outrage over that photo was totally contrived. Bush was there surveying the damage. He wanted to see it for himself. This is how you survey it, especially when you're the president. I mean, did they expect the sitting president to rappel down into the floodwaters and start personally rescuing people? Do they want him on a boat going to stranded people and rescuing them? Of course not. Of course, that's not what you want the president to do. If he had shown up to do that, to play hero, it would have been a scandal of its own, because then he'd be taking up resources for a photo op. So Bush did the right thing. He wanted to see what was happening with his own eyes. He didn't want to get in the middle of it and be a huge distraction. So he flew over the wreckage so that he could see it. Which is why, again, no one could ever explain what they think he should have been doing instead of that. By contrast, Kamala stared at a blank page and pretended to talk into a phone. We don't know where her plane was. If the media had any integrity at all, this would be a much bigger debacle than the Bush photograph, or at least one equal to that. There'd be the same level, at least, of mockery and outrage. But of course, there won't be, because these people have no shame. And also, there's no racial narrative to spin up here, because many residents of the impacted areas of North Carolina, unlike the residents of New Orleans, are white. And that might be why both the corporate press and the Biden administration have spent the last 24 hours instead talking about climate change, blaming climate change for this disaster. The federal government is supposedly blameless. It's not their fault, it's climate change. Watch the DHS secretary's response to the concerns of one mayor in North Carolina who complains that no one has cell service, which can obviously cause major life-threatening problems. Here's what he says to that.
I want to read to you something that the mayor of Canton, North Carolina said, talking about the frustration that a lot of people feel about the lack of communication. Here's what he said. It is unacceptable and disgusting that in our time of need, cellular service for the entire region is blocked out. There's no excuse for that. I mean, we knew the storm was coming. I can't believe this is a normalcy. Is this a systemic problem? Is this something that is going to be more and more normal as we see more and more devastating storms? What do you say to people who are desperate to find out whether people they love are still alive?
I well understand the concerns expressed. These are people in the midst of a tragic hurricane. That is precisely why we and others have been deploying communications resources to ensure that communication is reinstated as quickly as possible. The reality is that the severity and frequency of extreme weather events are only increasing.
So we've gone over this so many times that it's not worth showing all of the data at this point, but here it is anyway. There's been no increase in Category 4 or 5 hurricanes that have made landfall in the continental United States from 1900 to 2019. And as Michael Schellenberger has reported, the U.S. government's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts the maximum intensity of Atlantic hurricanes and tropical storms will rise 5% in the 21st century, but their frequency will decline 25%. The implication that it's unprecedented for a major hurricane to affect an inland area like Asheville is also false. A meteorology student named Chris Martz pointed out that Asheville was previously wiped out by the remnants of a hurricane all the way back in July of 1916. That was more than 100 years ago, long before we were supposedly emitting unsustainable levels of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So a disaster like this in a place like Asheville is very rare, which is one of the reasons, like we talked about yesterday, one of the reasons why the residents were not prepared for this, understandably, because it is very rare, but it's not unprecedented. So it's like a once-in-a-century kind of event. But how could it be a once-in-a-century event if it's all because of man-made climate change? Now, none of these politicians or media outlets will ever answer that question because their goal isn't actually to save lives. Their goal is to deflect responsibility for their own failures. And one of those failures, a huge one, involves the government's persistent, almost incredible ability to waste money while mismanaging massive infrastructure projects. This is an actual systemic issue the Biden administration should be concerned with. Specifically, when the Biden administration rolled out its $40 billion plan to connect rural Americans to the internet all the way back in 2021, they cut Elon Musk's companies out of the program. The result was that nobody got internet access out in those areas. As the Washington Times reports, quote, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, or BEAD, has not connected a single rural home to high-speed internet service since Mr. Biden signed the funding into law in November 2021. At the current pace of distributing the funds, high-speed internet connections to most of the rural areas intended to benefit from BEAD won't be completed until 2030. The Commerce Department, which is in charge of the program, said none of the projects will begin until 2025 or 2026. Mr. Musk's SpaceX is excluded from the BEAD federal subsidies because the money is reserved for companies deploying fiber optic cable, which the government views as a more proven technology than satellite connections. So they spent billions of dollars as part of a plan to implement broadband equity. Yes, broadband equity. And what does broadband equity mean in practice? Well, it means that nobody gets broadband. It means they cut Elon Musk's Starlink system out of the funding. Probably on a pretext because they don't like what he's doing on X. But now that there's an actual crisis, that pretext doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. As you just heard the DHS secretary say, the Biden administration is deploying communications resources to North Carolina. More specifically, they're deploying Elon Musk's Starlink to the state. Here's a Biden administration official stating that they're installing Starlink systems now on an emergency basis so that people impacted by the hurricanes can communicate with the outside world. Watch.
We're also very focused on restoring communications capabilities. FEMA, the FCC, and private telecommunications providers are working together to help restore temporary communications as quickly as possible by establishing temporary cell sites and allowing for roaming where possible, where a resident can connect to any network available even if they aren't subscribed to that network. Today, FEMA will install 30 Starlink receivers in western North Carolina to provide immediate connectivity for those in greatest need.
Now, fortunately, people living in North Carolina don't need to rely on the Biden administration to get those Starlink systems online. There are a lot of private individuals bringing Starlink equipment into the state and setting it up. But again, none of this would be necessary if the Biden administration had done its job in the first place and spent the $40 billion on technologies like Starlink. So this is yet another problem created entirely by the federal government. At this point, there needs to be accountability or more people will die, if not during this disaster, then during the next one. There were massive failures at every level in this storm, from the lack of an early warning to the aftermath where they blamed climate change as people are stranded on rooftops. We saw something similar in the Maui fires, where the authorities blocked evacuation routes during the blaze, in part because FEMA didn't have an effective evacuation plan in place. If you remember, during that disaster, people talked a lot about Kamala Harris's statements about how equity should determine who gets critical aid in a time of crisis. People pointed out that FEMA's top goal on its website was literally to instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. But then everybody kind of moved on. And yet Kamala remained in power along with the bureaucracy that actually runs the country. And now, just a year later, even more people are dead and stranded without any warning, and the government's incompetence is once again on full display. Saying that Helene is the Biden administration's Hurricane Katrina is actually underselling how callous this administration's response has been. For all the failures during Katrina, the general consensus among critics was that the government was either incompetent or indifferent. But George Bush never sabotaged, the attempts to get internet access to communities. He didn't use climate change as some kind of catch-all excuse while shelters were being overrun and people were dying. He didn't tell American citizens that there's nothing more he can do for them. He didn't go on a podcast and talk about how much he loves Doritos during all of this, as Kamala Harris just did. He also wasn't on the record saying that disaster relief should be distributed based on equity, as, again, Kamala Harris has said in the past. And just for good measure, let's go back and watch that clip again.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so women. Absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities and do that work.
So how much did this equity philosophy interfere with the federal government's response to Helene? We don't really know. We don't know the full extent of it. We'll probably never know. But when you watch clips like that and you see failures like what's unfolding right now, it doesn't look like mere incompetence or indifference. It looks like something else as well. It looks also like malice. Or as the Biden-Harris administration calls it, equity. The only reason more people aren't pointing this out is that when the next natural disaster strikes in your neighborhood, they want to administer some equity there as well. Lecture you about your gas stove while you're clinging to life on your rooftop. Nearly 20 years after Hurricane Katrina, it turns out that George Bush's crime wasn't that he failed. It's that he didn't fail the right people. In the name of equity from Hawaii to North Carolina, one botched disaster response at a time, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are finally correcting that mistake. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Are you still struggling with back taxes or unfiled returns? The IRS is escalating collections by adding 20,000 new agents and sending millions of demand letters. Handling this alone can be a huge mistake and cost you thousands of dollars. In these challenging times, your best offense is with Tax Network USA. With over 14 years of experience, the experts at Tax Network USA have saved clients millions in back taxes. Regardless of the size of your tax issue, their expertise is your advantage. Tax Network USA offers 3 key services: protection, compliance, and settlement. Upon signing up, Tax Network USA will immediately contact the IRS to secure a protection order, ensuring that aggressive collection activities such as garnishments, levies, or property seizures are halted. If you haven't filed in a while, if you need amended returns, or if you're missing records, Tax Network USA's expert tax preparers will update all of your filings to eliminate the risk of IRS enforcement. Then they'll create a settlement strategy to reduce or eliminate your tax debt. The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and now that tax season is over, collection season has begun. Tax Network USA can even help with state tax issues. For a complimentary consultation, call today at 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. So Kamala, as mentioned at the top, appeared on another podcast this week, and she talked about her love of Doritos. We don't need to play that clip, but this is something that she has for some reason honed in on Doritos as a thing that she wants to highlight. I guess she thinks that it makes her very relatable. She's very relatable because she likes Doritos, so she constantly talks about it. But here she was asked in this one clip that I'll play about her economic plan. Again, this is a question that comes up a lot because nobody knows what her plan is. So it's always asked. And even after being asked again and getting her answer, we still don't know what her economic plan is. Here's what she said.
Going from a show to a whole entire company, what is your economic plan moving forward for people who are living paycheck to paycheck and struggling for groceries and rent and homeowners?
So, look, I grew up, my sister and I were raised by our mother. We lived for a long time in an apartment on top of a child care center. That child care center was actually owned by a woman who lived 2 doors down from us, Mrs. Shelton, who was, by all of our accounts and feelings, our second mother. She helped raise us. And so she was a small business owner. So I'll start with the small business, and congratulations on what you guys have done. I, from a child, knew who our small business owners are, right? I mean, you're business leaders, but you're also civic leaders. You take seriously your voice and how you can mentor, how you can grow, right? Communities and the sense of communities. I love our small businesses. And so a lot of my work in terms of building and growing the economy has focused on small businesses. And my vision overall is we need to build an opportunity economy in which we increase opportunity for all, including small business owners. So a lot of my work, even in the Senate, was about increasing access to capital through our small businesses, and in particular through our community banks. So I've been responsible for billions of dollars more now going into our community banks, because they're in the community, and then they know who's in the community and where the talent is and who's doing good in the community, what the community wants.
Okay, and it continues on from there. I think we've heard enough. So it's a meme at this point that she can't help but repeat, where she's asked about her plan, and her response starts with, I grew up. And she almost said, I grew up in a middle-class family, and then she stopped herself. So that's her reflex, and she showed at least enough self-awareness to pull herself back. Then she ends up basically giving the same answer, where she talks about who she grew up, and she starts naming whatever woman helped raise her. And it's like, nobody cares about that, Kamala. Nobody cares how you grew up. Nobody cares about your autobiography. It's not very interesting. Even if it was interesting, still nobody cares, because they want to know how they're going to afford groceries. That's what they care. They care about housing prices. They care about those kinds of things. That's what we need to know. But you kind of have to understand what's happening here. When Kamala goes off on her I grew up in a middle-class family ramble, we tend to think that she's just trying to filibuster and avoid answering the question. And that's all that she's doing. And that's true. She is doing that. That is also what's going on. But it's not just that. She thinks that this is what people want to hear. She thinks that because this is how she sees her own role, her position, her job, right? In her mind, her job, if she becomes president, is not to get things done. It's not to accomplish anything. It's not to do anything, practically speaking, to make people's lives better. That's not what her job is, in her mind. Her job is to understand. She thinks that's what the voters want. They just want someone who understands. That the American people, they just want to feel seen. We just want to know that she can relate. Her job as president, again, if she becomes president, God forbid, is to be relator-in-chief, empathizer-in-chief. That's how she sees her role. That's the whole, the terribly cringy Mamala thing that we don't hear as much from her. But I don't know if Drew Barrymore coined that or not, but we heard, there's that clip from Drew Barrymore where she says, we need you to be the Mamala. We need America needs a mom. And that's how Kamala Harris sees herself. You don't need her to do anything. You just need, as long as she can. So when she's asked, what's the economic plan? People are suffering. People need. Her answer is, well, I see you. I can relate. I have empathy for you. I've been there. And none of that is true, of course. She has no empathy. She hasn't really experienced any of this. But even if it were, that's not the point. This is not what we need from you. People do not look to politicians. They don't look to the president wanting to feel like, oh, this person can relate to us. And it's kind of amazing that politicians like Kamala still don't understand this when they have the example of Donald Trump. They have this rather glaring example that I think shows pretty definitively that that's not what the voters care about. Because Donald Trump did not grow up in a middle-class family and has never claimed to. He very clearly did not grow up middle class. He grew up rich. He's been rich his whole life. He's been very rich and very famous for most of his life. He's lived a life that most people cannot relate to. And he himself cannot personally relate to the lifestyles and of middle class, working class people. He can't personally relate to. He's never lived that life. And yet, working class people love Trump. So what should that tell you? Well, for Kamala, it tells her that, well, working class people are a bunch of racists and they're terrible people and they need to be fixed. I need to fix them. That's the lesson that she takes, which is why she misses the point. But if she could see past that, which she can't, then one of the things she could learn is that, oh, okay, well, actually the voters don't care about that. Like, they don't need to feel like, as voters, we don't need to feel like we could be friends with you. I don't need to think that I could, it doesn't matter. I don't need to know that you can relate to my struggles or what. It doesn't matter. We don't care about that. The thing that's drawn people to Trump has always been, number one, they feel that he's authentic. He tells you what he thinks. And number two, he projects the image of someone who can just get things done and is more pragmatic and will go in there and get the job done. Okay, Doug Emhoff, the would-be First Lady, appeared on Jen Psaki's MSNBC show, or I don't know, does she have a show now? I don't know, but she was interviewing him, and during the course of the interview, she said this, watch.
Important part, an interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny. I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this.
So we hear this yet again. Once again, we're told that Doug Emhoff has reshaped masculinity. The guy who cheated on his first wife and got the nanny pregnant, that guy has reshaped masculinity. And the funny thing is that they say that he's reshaped it because he's so supportive of his spouse. But the way that he supported his last spouse was to have sex with the nanny and father a child who, mysteriously, we don't know what happened to that child, but I think we all know. For all we know, he's supporting Kamala the same way. For all we know, they've got a new nanny that he's got his eyes on. I mean, I don't know. We have no idea. There actually is no evidence that Emhoff supports Kamala other than the fact that he appears on the campaign trail with her and smiles for the cameras, but that's what he has to do. I mean, what else could he do? Even if he hates his wife, which he might or might not, we don't know. But either way, he's not going to go in front of cameras and say that. He's not going to announce that he doesn't think his own wife should be president. So he's doing what he has to do. Like the spouses of all politicians. He's doing the exact same thing that the spouse, whether man or woman, of every politician in America does. Okay, does that mean that they actually all have good marriages? No, most of them don't. I think we all understand that. Yet they project the image of, oh, I support them. Because you have no choice. You have to say that. You don't get credit for that. But none of that really matters to the media when they fawn over Emhoff and his supportiveness. Because for them, what makes him a good male role model is simply that he plays second fiddle to his wife. That's it. They don't actually care whether he's really supportive behind the scenes or anything. They don't care. They don't care if he's out having sex with a nanny again. They don't care about that. They want him to be the new icon of masculinity. In fact, they're insisting that he already is. They're trying to conjure this into reality. Which you notice, as always, it's like it's always the women, the liberal women, who are hailing Doug Emhoff as this new image of masculinity that men are looking up to. No man is saying that. No man is saying that I want to be like Doug Emhoff. That's the guy. I want to be like Doug. No man is saying that anywhere. It's all the women Not all the women, but to be clear, liberal women on TV are saying that. And what they like about him is that he's a man with less power and prominence than his wife. That's it. Doesn't really matter to them what kind of guy Emhoff actually is. That's why they look past the impregnating the nanny bit, which is like kind of a big deal. They look over, they gloss over it. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. There's nothing about Emhoff himself as a man that they find impressive or desirable. That's the point. They are impressed because he is an unimpressive, unimposing, lump on a log type of guy who just sits there and lets the woman take the lead, and that's what they want. That's what they want all men to be. They want men to just sit by silently and obediently and accept second place, play the backup role. All right, moving on to this, one of the interesting things about the reaction to my film, Am I Racist, is that, as you've heard, of course, mainstream film critics won't review it. And yet mainstream journalists have written many think pieces about it. There have been more think pieces about the film than reviews of it. So our think piece to review ratio is maybe the highest in the history of cinema. I'll have to check with Guinness on that, but I feel like it's the highest. And now we have yet another think piece. This is from the New Yorker. And credit to the New Yorker for covering the film. I'm glad they did. And I do give them credit for that. Even though the writer, Vincent Cunningham, it will shock you to learn, did not enjoy the film. So he didn't like it. Doesn't seem like he liked it very much. But he did write about it. It's a lengthy article. If you go to New Yorker, the NewYorker.com, you can see it. Here's the headline. Is Matt Walsh trying to make Am I Racist the Borat of the right? In his work with the Daily Wire in a new movie, the conservative podcaster and activist tries to expose the hypocrisies of the left. It's the headline. I'll read a little bit of this. It says, the movie, directed by Justin Folk, is supposed to be a comedic documentary about the opportunistic follies of the diversity, equity, and inclusion industry, something a red-pilled Sacha Baron Cohen might make. The podcaster and commentator Matt Walsh interviews professional anti-racists and, eventually donning a bad disguise, infiltrates DEI seminars and tries to push them toward absurdity. Well, we already have a problem here. Not the part where he says that I'm a red-pilled Sacha Baron Cohen. That's great. I mean, that's maybe the most flattering compliment I've ever received in my career. You know, that part I like. But the part where he says that in the film I try to push these DEI people toward absurdity, well, no, I mean, you already don't understand the point of the movie because I don't push them there. Not really. They're already there. I'm just revealing the absurdity. I'm not pushing them to it. I'm just giving it a platform, is all. Reading on a bit more, it says, skipping ahead a bit, this is the first theatrical release by the Daily Wire. In an earlier movie, What is a Woman, from 2022, which, well, I think you already get that one too, also features Walsh and was released directly to Daily Wire subscribers. For the most part, Walsh is a small screen presence on his podcast, video clips of which he posts on Facebook. He's an often sincere, frankly moralizing presence. Adults don't have time to be sick, he advised recently. Taking sick days from work, he added, should be embarrassing. He also wants to tell you here in 2024 what have been the negative effects of changing the name of the football team in Washington, D.C. from the Redskins to the Commanders after dropping the former name in 2020. When Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill was recently jostled by Miami-Dade policemen reliably, Walsh was there to break down the footage and show you how the whole thing was Hill's fault. Well, it was. In the videos, he addresses the camera directly, lowering one eye or another toward the lens whenever he gets an especially grave point to get across. He usually wears a dad plaid shirt. If you put him on mute, you might think he was one of the Prius-driving lefties living in Portland or Seattle, one of those whose hackles his whole career is organized around raising. So a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with the movie here, of course. I like how he says that I'm sincere and then immediately references my joke about how adults should never be sick. Walsh is usually a very sincere person. For instance, he said that adults should never, ever be sick. A joke that, of course, like millions of morons took entirely seriously. Yeah, guys, I literally think that it's not ever okay to be sick when you're an adult, that under any circumstance. if you're dying of a communicable disease, if you're in your final moments of life, I think you should drag yourself to work at Home Depot and die on the job. That is literally what I think, obviously, right? I mean, of course, that couldn't be comedic hyperbole, could it? I must mean that totally liberal. There could not possibly be even a shred of intentional hyperbole in that statement. Yes, you're all right about that. So anyway, I also don't understand how wearing dad plaid, as he says, also makes it look like you drive a Prius, because those two aesthetics don't really go together, I would think, but whatever. So then he goes on, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, be a bit self-serving too, but it's a good article, I think, all things considered. Talks about Judged, which I like. Instead, I think there are just two takeaways when I read this article. First of all, the article does the same thing that most of the articles in mainstream publications have done when it comes to this movie. He goes on to acknowledge later on in his piece that the Robin DiAngelo part of the movie is effective. I mean, he essentially acknowledges that it's effective. He doesn't say that. He says the scene is the biggest coup of the film. And then he describes what happens there. And then by the end of the article, he does this move that has now become familiar, where he disowns her. He describes her work in this article as simplistic, overly binary, and patronizing. And we've seen this over and over again. The left deals with the film and the way that it embarrasses these people by disowning them. It's not just Robin DiAngelo, but all the people that appear in the film and make fools of themselves. What people like Vincent here do in the media is they say, well, yeah, but they're not really, they don't represent this really. Which, by the way, it's a disingenuous move. It's a bad faith move, but it does mean that Robin DiAngelo's career is over. I mean, it's over. We did end her career. She's been disowned by her own side. And once that happens, then you're done. That's it. It's over. Curtains. And so that's a win. I'll take that win. And then there's this part. I want to read. It's kind of long, but it's the last part of this article I want to read because there's another point here. So it says, toward the end of the movie, Walsh takes his act to two working class communities. One's a largely white biker bar. Don't tread on me, a patch on somebody's jacket says. And then he describes the scene, and then we go talk to black people in New Orleans. He describes that. So if you've seen the movie, you know those scenes. And then he says this, these scenes are the most revealing of the film, but Walsh doesn't know why. He thinks that he's merely pointing out how divorced the language of big anti-racism is from the lives of everyday folks. He misses, though, a grand irony. Even when he's in character, supposedly parroting DEI, he is stunningly fluent in its rhythms. None of the working class people profess to know what he means when he says structural. The answer he offers would go over just fine in the same precincts of Twitter that Walsh wants to troll. This gives away the game, and it shows Walsh to be just as much of a grifter as the admittedly quite shameless DiAngelo and her well-paid, lesser-known ilk. Just like them, he's playing to a small audience of largely white professionals, often deranged by paying too much attention to the worst and stupidest parts of the internet. If the high-priced workshop crowd has the left flank covered, Walsh is shoring up the right. But these two types often work at the same corporation or selective university and follow the same Twitter accounts. They clash over politics, then send their kids to the same schools. Okay. Some of that is just wrong. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That the people I'm talking to on the right go to the same universities. They work at the same... What the hell are you talking about? No, that's not how it works. Where you've got the left and right, and they work at the same universities. No, they don't. No, they don't. The left owns the university system almost entirely. But anyway, so he says that the scenes with the bikers in the black community in New Orleans are the most effective in the film. But then he says, I don't know why. I, as the person who made the film, I don't know why that's the case. I don't understand my own point. And then he goes on to describe what is the deliberate point of those scenes. Yes, Vincent, exactly. None of the working class people know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's the point. This whole conversation is far outside the actual lives and experiences of normal people. Yes, Vincent, good job. Good job. You got it. Well done. So this is another thing you see in some of the analysis of the film. You get these people who are quite sure that they're more intelligent than me. And so they say, well, here's the point of that scene, but Walsh doesn't even understand it. Or I've even read, in some cases, people who will point to one of the funny moments of the film, and they'll say, well, that was funny, even though Walsh wasn't trying to be funny. He doesn't understand why it's funny, but it was fun. No, I meant for it to be funny, and I meant to make the points that you're picking up. I mean, you're picking up some other things that you're just from your own delusional mind, but like the basic point of that's the... just because I don't turn to the camera and say, the point of this scene is, just because I don't do that doesn't mean I don't understand my own point. So actually what you're doing, even if you don't mean to do it, is acknowledging some of the subtlety of the film, because we are not directly sermonizing. That's what conservative entertainment usually does. We deliberately chose not to do that. And we are trying not to do that. And so if you're picking up points in the movie and you're like, I don't even know if they meant to, there's supposed to be kind of like layers there that you can look at and talk about. And all of it very intentional, in fact. And the fact that this film can provoke a lengthy article in the New Yorker at all, I think proves that there are multiple layers to the film that, yes, are there intentionally. Believe it or not. We made the movie on purpose. Hard to believe, but we did. Parents, listen up. I've got an early holiday gift that's actually useful, unlike most of the junk marketed to kids these days. We've all been there. One minute your kid is bouncing off the walls, the next they're sick as a dog. And of course, it always happens at the most inconvenient time, like when you're on vacation or the doctor's office is closed. Well, the Wellness Company has just launched the Kids Medical Emergency Kit. No more relying on some government-run medical gatekeeper process or desperately calling your pediatrician on weekends. This kit gives you 6 critical medicines right at your fingertips. We're talking treatment for things like strep throat, ear infections, and get this, it even includes an EpiPen. Because in those critical moments when your child's life is on the line, you don't want to be waiting for an ambulance. Now, I know most of you aren't medical professionals. That's why they've included a 40-page guidebook. It's like having an expert right by your side. Ordering this kit is a lot easier than dragging your sick kid to urgent care or the ER. Just a few clicks, fill out a form, and it's at your door. No more late-night pharmacy runs when your child is miserable. This isn't just another purchase. It's about being prepared. It's about not letting the system dictate how you care for your family. So here's what you need to do. Go to urgentcarekit.com/Walsh. Use promo code Walsh to save up to $40 and get free shipping. That's urgentcarekit.com/Walsh. Promo code Walsh. Be the hero your child needs exactly when they need you. The 2024 vice presidential debate, between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz is coming to Daily Wire Plus tonight. But let's face it, these debates are better with friends, especially friends who can spot every lie and false promise. That's why we're doing a special backstage with pre-show analysis from Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, Jeremy Boring, and me. Plus, stick around for a post-debate breakdown with insights you're not going to hear from the mainstream media. So instead of yelling at your TV alone, come yell with us. The vice presidential debate tonight at 8:30 Eastern on Daily Wire Plus. Ready to join the fight? Get your Daily Wire Plus membership now for 47% off. Join us today at dailywire.com/subscribe and use the code FIGHT to join today. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. For our daily cancellation today, we turn to Stevie Nicks, who is, of course, the now 76-year-old lead singer of the band Fleetwood Mac. Nicks just released a solo song for the first time in 4 years, and this one, she says, is the most important song she's ever written. It's called The Lighthouse. The Daily Wire reports, quote, Nicks said she wrote the song following the Dobbs Supreme Court decision in 2022, which overturned Roe v. Wade and the constitutional right to abortion. I find it very sad at 76 years old. I had to see Roe v. Wade taken away, Nicks told People in an email interview. 2 years ago, when I realized the consequences of women's rights that are vanishing, I watched a lot of news and I was like a sponge. It just went into me. One morning I woke up, which I never write when I wake up in the morning, and all of a sudden I went, I have my scars. So I just grabbed my notebook. I started writing the whole thing. She continued, all the stories that we tell about the necessity for women's health care and the necessity for a safe and legal abortion option for women is absolutely necessary. She was inspired in the middle of the night by the line, I have my scars. By the most cliche, boring line, a line that's appeared in 7 million other songs. And she wakes up in the middle of the night feeling, oh my gosh, give me a piece of paper, I gotta write that down. What other brilliant metaphors have you been inspired by? Did you wake up in the morning? Your love is deep like an ocean. Give me a notepad, gotta write that down. No one has ever written that line before. I compared love to an ocean. No one's ever thought of that. I compare pain to scars. No one's ever thought of anything like that before. Anyway, so this is her song, her ode to abortion, and Nicks has sung the praises of abortion before, including in an interview a few years ago when she said that the band Fleetwood Mac could not have existed if she had not had an abortion herself when she was younger. So she sacrificed her child on the altar of career success by her own admission. And now she's old and she's alone and nobody cares about her music really anymore. And so it's a tragic tale, one that with a bit of self-reflection could make for a powerful, mournful song. But Stevie Nicks is not the kind to engage in self-reflection. So instead, here's the song that she came up with. We'll play as much of this as I can stomach. Go ahead.
I have my scars, you have yours. Don't let them take your power. Don't leave it alone in the final hours. They'll take your soul, they'll take your power. Don't close your eyes and hope for the best. The dark is out there, the light is going fast. Until the final hours, your life's forever changed. And all the rights that you had yesterday are taken away.
All right. That was 2 years. 2 years in the lab. 2 years in the lab with a pen and paper coming up with that song. The first thing you notice about the song is that it's bad. I mean, it's just a bad song. Judging from a purely artistic perspective, it is pure crap. The singing is subpar. Not even a catchy melody. Like there's no melody. The lyrics are trite and cliched. Again, the first line of the song: "I have my scars, you have yours." It's like Papa Roach circa 2002 levels of poetry we're dealing with here. And so we could use this as a jumping off point to have a conversation once again about how the left can't make art anymore. But we just talked about that last week, so I'm not going to hammer that point again. I want you to notice something else. Let's go back to the lyrics one more time. She sings, "I have my scars, you have yours. Don't let them take your power. Don't leave it alone in the final hours. They'll take your soul, they'll take your power. Don't close your eyes and hope for the best. The dark is out there, the light is going fast. Until the final hours, your life's forever changed, and all the rights that you had yesterday are taken away, and now you're afraid. You should be afraid. You should be afraid." That's a real inspirational message, by the way. You should be afraid. Now, again, leave aside the fact that a third grader could write better lyrics than this. She rhymes the word power twice in one verse, uses the phrase "these final hours" twice. She rhymes afraid with afraid and then again with afraid. Very poor writing. But that's not really the point. Instead, think about this. If Stevie Nicks didn't come out and tell us that this is a pro-abortion song, you would never know it. There's nothing in the song, and again, leaving the music video aside where you see people holding signs, like there's nothing in the song itself that even hints in that direction, except for the line about taking rights away. But that's as explicit as it gets, and that's a line that could, of course, refer to anything. Now, sure, if you're a real poet or lyricist, then you don't want to be too on the nose, but you should be able to communicate your message even without spelling it out literally. The audience should know what the hell you're trying to say. If the message of the song is, hey, abortion is great and we should do abortions, then you have failed if people cannot understand that message just by listening to the song. If you have to explain in an interview that that's what you meant, then the song didn't do its job. And that's the case here because you never know from these lyrics and from the metaphors and imagery that she uses that it's about abortion. She's got to do the interview in People magazine to explain the point that she was trying to make. The song itself cannot speak for itself. Why is that? Well, because Stevie Nicks has lost whatever artistic talent she had a long time ago, and so she's just not she's not an artist anymore. But the other problem is that and this is the thing, it's not possible to write an inspirational song about abortion. It's not really possible to write a positive, like a song that has a positive view of abortion which is what she's attempting here. Plenty of songs have dealt with this subject, but they're always sad and tragic because abortion is a sad and tragic thing, even in cases where the person who wrote the song isn't pro-life. Still, songs that are explicitly about abortion always end up sounding pro-life. And there's a million examples of this, so we'll go through a couple. For example, back in the 90s, the song Brick by Ben Folds 5. And the song is about the lead singer taking his girlfriend to get an abortion. Now, I don't think it's intended to be a pro-life anthem. I'm pretty sure the lead singer is probably pro-abortion. And yet, listening to the song, you come away with the impression that abortion is a sad, mournful sort of thing. Whether or not the writer of the song wants you to feel that way, you still do if you listen to the song. The 90s had a bunch of songs like that. The Goo Goo Dolls had a song called Slide that a lot of people don't know is actually about abortion. But if you listen to the lyrics, you can tell. So the second verse, don't you love the life you killed? The priest is on the phone. Your father hit the wall. Your ma disowned you. Don't suppose I'll ever know what it means to be a man. It's something I can't change. So it's pretty clear what that song is about. Don't you love the life you killed? Like, it's right there. When you listen to the lyrics, once again, the lead singer of Goo Goo Dolls, I don't know if he's conservative or not. He's probably not pro-life, but it sounds like a pro-life song. That's what happens when you try to honestly and artistically deal with this subject. It is unavoidable. If you made a song with an obviously pro-abortion slant, where it's made clear that that's the point of the song, it would sound psychotic. It would be like a song celebrating pancreatic cancer. It just wouldn't make sense. And that's why, again, even pop stars who are rabidly pro-abortion end up making pro-life songs when they don't mean to. Think about Madonna with the 80s hit Papa Don't Preach. The chorus of that song, Papa Don't Preach, I'm in trouble deep, but I made up my mind, I'm keeping my baby. Why does she keep the baby? Well, because the song it's like a dance. You're supposed to dance to it. And it would be deranged if the chorus was, Papa Don't Preach, I'm in trouble deep, I made up my mind, I'm killing my baby. That would be just jarring artistically, even for people who are pro-abortion, especially for them, actually. So the only way to make a pro-abortion song is to never say anything in the song that is actually pro-abortion. Like, if you actually deal with the subject in the song, the audience will come away from it thinking like, oh, abortion's pretty sad. That's tough. That's a terrible thing. So if you want to keep it pro-abortion, you have to talk about lighthouses and scars and, fighting for rights or whatever. But you can never hint lyrically at the actual subject. The moment you make the subject clear, the song automatically sounds pro-life, whether you want it to or not. As always, abortion advocacy must never sound like abortion advocacy. And that is why Stevie Nicks and her pro-abortion song that doesn't sound like a pro-abortion song are today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
The stage is set. The stakes are sky high. Senator Vance, Governor Walz, face off. But who will land the knockout punch? Don't watch the debate alone. Experience it with the most trusted names in conservative media. Daily Wire Backstage brings you unfiltered commentary, biting wit, and expert analysis you won't get anywhere else. Join Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, and Jeremy Boring for a debate night you'll never forget. Daily Wire Backstage, tonight, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, only on Daily Wire Plus.